When I first met him 6 years ago, he predicted that he would one day win the World Chess Championship. When on Christmas Eve he did, it was in fact a dream come true. My guest today is someone whom legends are written about. But what is he himself like? What is the person underneath all about? Well, let's see if he reveals a bit of his personality as I introduce you to the new World Chess Champion, Vishwanathan Anand. Welcome to the program, Anand.
Nice to be here.
Let's go back to that moment on December the 24th when Alexei Shirov put out his hand to concede defeat. What was the first thought that went through your mind?
It was all pretty hazy. It was just a blur. It went by very fast. I was pacing around waiting for him to resign. And I'd been expecting him to resign for about 10 moves already. And he'd managed to find resources that kept the game going. And then finally it was getting to the point where it was all over. And at some point I was pacing around, so he had to wait for me to come back to the stage before he could resign. He resigned. I shook hands and I had this feeling, well, it must be over now. I think that's 3.5 or something like that. But I didn't want to do something really foolish till I knew, it was over.
You wanted confirmation.
Something like that. And then it just went very fast. The audience started clapping, and then I was moved to the press. And in some sense, I understood, of course, that it had happened, but it didn't hit me. It didn't hit me for a while. Maybe till the next day, it hadn't really sunk in.
It wasn't just that you won. It was, in fact, the overwhelming nature of your victory. Did that surprise you?
Yes, it did. I mean, I certainly expected it to be a very tough match. I mean, Alexei is one of the top 5 players in the world, and he's been one of the best players for a while now. So, I mean, 3.5 hours was like a dream. I mean, I couldn't have expected it to go so well.
Many people said afterwards that somewhere during the second game, the game you beat him in for the first time, he began to mentally crumble. Do you think, looking at him as you sat opposite him, you got that feeling yourself?
He himself indicated this as the reason. I had the feeling that when he let this game slip away, and it's a game he should have been able to draw. And when you lose that, and sometimes you can just, as for me, I grew in confidence after this game. I thought, okay, this is just a free point. This is beautiful. I mean, obviously, I had to work quite hard. I mean, the end game went on God knows how many moves. But I had this feeling, okay, it should have been a draw, and I got an extra half point, and that's a bonus. And now we're exactly where we were before, except I'm a point ahead, and this is
suddenly
brilliant.
You had an inkling, God's on my side.
Exactly, and I had that feeling. I had the thought, okay, this could be it. I mean, I can do everything as I was going to do anyway, but with an extra point. I mean, it's just an extra point in the bank. That's great.
Critics turned around and said that because players like Kasparov and Kramnik weren't actually participating in the FIDE championship, somehow this wasn't a full-fledged championship. How do you react to that sort of slightly churlish comment?
I would basically say that it wasn't my control, and what I can't control, I don't worry about. I couldn't put a gun to their heads and force them to play. If they choose not to play, there's nothing I can do about it. And there is no championship in the world where those guys are going to play and where they're going to get everybody else to play as well. So, I mean, that's just tough.
Now, I'm told from all the newspaper articles that shortly after you won in Tehran, you rang your mother. Is it true that she ticked you off for what she thought was a badly played point earlier on?
Yes. Well, in fact, there were 2 ways to win. One was to take a bishop, which had been hanging, swap queens, and then a process which I basically felt white was certain to win, but it was going to take a long time. I mean, I had to slowly mop one of his pawns after the other and win. And the other one, which won, is queen, and then there'd be this blaze of flurry of tactics. And if everything worked out well, it should be over in about 5 moves. But somehow at that stage, I felt I'm so close to the championship. I'm going to go the slow route. I'm just going to take the bishop, swap the queens, and then slowly mop up. I don't want to take any chance that something goes wrong.
No risk at all.
Yeah, whereas of course my mother sitting at home decided, but this could be over in 5 minutes, and you did it over 20 moves or something.
There was an earlier scary moment, wasn't there? I wonder, did you have that in your mind at this moment? Because when you were playing Khalifman much earlier, there was a scary moment you went through. You came through it fine, but people said that briefly you'd looked death in the eyes.
Yes, and I think till that point I had been slightly nervous. Maybe nervous is not even the best word, maybe apprehensive. Because you understand, okay, that you can do your job well and so on, but that somehow in this format you can't afford even one mistake. I mean, one mistake badly timed just finishes the match. And in 2 game matches, let's say the first game is a draw, then the second game has this, so you're playing in effect with the sword hanging over you. So, but once I had been through that and survived that, then I really had this incredible feeling of, something's on my side, or somehow I can jump lakes and
So
walk over water,
near
do
death
whatever.
in a sense is a very reassuring thing, because you begin to feel, if I've escaped it, someone's on my side.
Yeah, you stop worrying about irrational things after that. I mean, until that point, you keep thinking, but, and this attack could develop, and maybe there's something I've missed, and so on and so forth. And after that, you become suddenly very objective and very calm. It's like, okay, I don't see it, so it's probably not there. And then you become even more confident.
But as you said, it just requires one bad moment for things to go wrong. Let's talk briefly about the earlier two attempts. In '95, you played against Kasparov, and you lost that by a margin of 3 points. Was that inexperience, or was that bid because you were in fact nervous?
I think mainly it was inexperience. By the time the match had finished, I had concluded that in that match, he was still far superior. I had understood that, okay, there were a lot of things, a lot of areas I needed to work on. And especially in the second half, it had become evident. The first half still, okay, you have your weaknesses, but till he can pinpoint them. We were playing an even match. And again, we're not talking of just chess capacity here. We're talking of preparation and just a feeling for when the critical moment in a match comes and how to deal with it then and so on.
You sound as if you learned a lot from that experience.
Oh, absolutely. I think that match was very useful for me.
But also, is it a useful thing to say to yourself, yes, he probably is at this point in time the better player, but I now know what I need to do to get to that level?
Yes, very much. I mean, I could see that his openings withstood beatings much better than mine did. Mine, one hit and it was sunk, whereas his could take 5 hits. So I could see that, suddenly I could see how he had worked out his repertoire and so on. And then I understood, okay, you just have to clearly work. But that's objective. You really need to learn that before you can get to the next stage.
Now, the second bid to be world champion happened 3 years later in '98 against Karpov. And that ended in a dramatic tie, at sort of 3-all. What happened then? Was that a momentary lapse of concentration?
To be honest, when I went for that game, I felt fine and I felt confident. I can't tell you, I didn't feel anything, I didn't have the slightest indication that something might go wrong. And then at the board, I was playing well up to a point. And then again, I cannot say I felt a certain nervousness or I had any feelings. In fact, it was like my hand had completely divorced itself from the body. It started making moves that I couldn't understand, and suddenly it was all over.
Do you think the hand of God suddenly slipped?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I should have made a move with my foot, to complete the marathon analogy. But I think basically I was really quite tired by that point, and the win the previous day had cost me a lot more energy than I had realized. Somehow with the euphoria, oh my God, it's 3-3, it was 2-3, and then I won that game to tie the match. And but the euphoria can sometimes mask the other problems you have. But I cannot say that affected me in any great way, because I understood that the match is fundamentally unfair. Karpov should never have been seeded into the final.
Absolutely, because he got a leap straight in.
Exactly. So, it didn't affect me or my confidence in any way. I understood, okay, it would have been nice to have finished it there. But basically, I never felt like I'd lost anything. So
but you said it didn't affect your confidence, yet defeat is never easy to take. And twice you've had, before you actually won it, the World Chess Championship in your grasp, but you weren't able to clinch it. That must have been pretty shattering.
No, not really. Like I said with the win, it didn't really sink in for a while, till maybe the 25th or 26th that I'd become world champion.
But the opposite, isn't that also true of defeat?
Exactly.
When defeat sinks in, then doesn't it depress?
Exactly. But in both cases, I dealt with it quite well. I mean, with the Kasparov match, okay, it was a 1-point lead, then a 2-point lead, then a 3-point lead. And you had time to adjust to this.
You were expecting it at the back of your mind.
By the time it actually happened, the 17th game was a big try. I tried my best and I got a winning position, but let it slip away. And that could have reduced the deficit to 2 points and kept it competitive. But anyway, the 18th game finished. But by the time I had time to mentally prepare myself. So already I was thinking what I'm going to do next. And with the Karpov match, okay, it went, and I went back home and I just thought, okay, there's no point even getting angry with myself or depressed, because this is silly. The guy cheated. I mean, he should never have had these conditions. And then I just left it at that. And when it started to sink in, by this point, I honestly just felt fine.
So you're able to actually just switch yourself off and put defeat aside and get on with life.
Exactly. I think the same thing that delays your appreciation of your victory also proved a very useful quality when I lost these matches, because I was able to view it very objectively and very passionately.
Tell me something, how much of a chess game is actually played in terms of mental toughness and perhaps even psychology?
Well, to be honest, most of it. Of course, pure chess knowledge, the technical side, is very, very important when there are huge differences in strength. But when you're either when both players have a fundamental strategic understanding of the game that's at the same level, or one compensates by tactical skill, what the other compensates with positional feeling or something. When you get this balance, then the game is almost purely mental. And that's the main thing. Most of the time you're making these leaps into the unknown. At some point, you will leave your opening preparation, you'll leave the familiar ground, and you'll go into areas where you're basically daring the other guys. Okay, here's my move, refute it if you can. And he has to come up with something. And both sides understand that they're somehow getting deeper and deeper. And at some point, the game will fundamentally pass this point of no return.
So he who dares better wins?
To some degree, but at some point, at that moment, your decisions are really just about intuition and your mental strength. You obviously have to make the right decision.
But it
just has to be right enough. It just has to be a little bit better than your opponent. That's all that matters there.
One of your opponents once said of you that he keeps incredibly calm when I know he's got a losing position. And that unnerves me because I say, what's he got up his sleeve? So it's a sort of game you're playing.
Yes, I can be quite distant about it, and maybe even philosophical. At some point, if I understand I have a losing position, then I can switch myself off and say, well, I'm losing, but what can be worse than nothing more is going to happen to me than get a 0.
Can you do the opposite, fool your opponent to think that even though he thinks you're losing, you're actually winning?
Well, that effect he has to do for himself, I'm afraid. I can't do it for him. But what I do is to look really confident. And this is not a ploy about him. At some point, I relax. I mean, when I understand my position's completely lost and I can't do anything about it, then I relax. I just think, okay, the worst thing that can happen to me is I lose the game. Then I get a 0 on the scoreboard. Fine, but I'll have fun. I'll make him work a little bit, enjoy torturing him, maybe, putting problems and things like that. And sometimes, approach the problem that way. It can affect your opponent. I can't say of course, I do lose games. I can't say it always works, but sometimes you can at least wind up your opponent a little bit.
And let's take a break. I want to come back in part 2 and talk about the person that lies behind this incredibly complex psychology and brain that keeps winning every chess championship he competes in. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Stick with us. Welcome back. My guest is Vishwanathan Anand. Let's talk a little about you personally in this part, Anand. You're the youngest of 3 children, and your siblings are considerably older than you. What sort of memories of childhood do you have?
Basically, very pleasant ones. I mean, I always felt I had just a very happy childhood. I can't really recall any major problems I had or something.
You were the baby of the family.
Pretty much.
Who did the indulging? Mummy, daddy, both?
Both of them, and my sister and brother as well. And I could play all of them off with each other. I mean, if my brother gave me a hassle, I could go to dad, and so on. So it worked out. But in the end, they all pampered me silly.
So game playing began very early when you were playing games with the family.
Yes, very much.
They say that you have a photographic memory. Is that true?
I have a very good memory for some things, so memory for other things. I guess whatever interests me, I can start memorizing facts very quickly.
You also mean you forget what you want to forget?
If you put it that way, yes. I forget whatever doesn't interest me, and whatever I don't want to remember, I can forget pretty efficiently as well.
Your parents say that when you were 3, they began to test your memory by using the family collection of records. Do you remember that?
Yes, very much. I mean, I think I've even seen some photos of this, where I used to put on this stool, climb on top of it to reach the records, and then scan them. And of course, there were these 3 or 4 records that I really liked very much. And my parents were impressed at what speed I could pick it out, just by the color of the cover or something, just the tip. And I would immediately yank it out, put it in, play the song, and that was it. So.
They also say that although you were quiet, perhaps even reserved as a child, when you were inside your pedal car, your entire personality changed.
I remember we had this wrong corridor, and so in this pedal car, I used to do this at the fastest speed possible, and brake exactly a few inches before the wall and reverse. But I don't know if it was a personality change. No Jekyll and Hyde stuff here, just me having fun.
You started playing chess when you were 7 or 8, when your mother actually began to teach you. Do you remember those early games?
Very little. I mean, I remember that when I was about 6, I learned, and then I remember something about going to the tournaments and so on, but I don't remember the games from that period. I remember, okay, the books I read and things like that, and how I'd try out certain things that the book said, and sometimes I'd get mated immediately, and sometimes, okay, they would work and so on. But it was quite gradual. I remember my first tournament, but I can't really remember the games I played at home.
So did the fascination and perhaps even the talent for chess blossom when your parents moved to the Philippines in the late 70s, early 80s?
Yes, very much. I mean, in the Philippines, there was a very active tournament circuit. And at that point, chess was really big in the Philippines. So you would have these TV programs on. And basically, if you keep having these inputs, then it allows you to sustain your interest, and your interest grows. I think by the time I came back, I was a chess nut.
There was a particular TV program called Chess Today, which used to have a regular competition. Surely you couldn't have forgotten that.
No, I haven't. In fact, I still remember almost all the books I have nowadays are still the books I picked up in that competition. I mean, basically, you'd have this puzzle every day. You solved it and sent in your solution, and if you were the winner, I mean, probably there'd be several people who solved, and they'd pick a winner, and you could go and collect your book. And after I'd won quite a few prizes, they took me to this, and I remember that moment vividly, where they took me to this huge room full of chess books and said, just pick whatever you want, take all the books you want, and please don't enter again. You've won 5 or 6 already, it's getting ridiculous. So that was quite nice.
It was between that period when you came back to India in 1983 that you really started taking part in competitions and winning them. And you've won, I think, everything from the National Sub-Junior Chess Championship to the World Championship. But which has given you the biggest thrill?
I guess in each moment, you know, that competition has a special value. I mean, I can remember what it was like winning the National Sub-Junior for the first time, and the National Junior, and, you know,
you were 13 when you won the National Sub-Junior.
When I won certain competitions. Yes, I was 13 then. And I won the National Junior as well, which is the under 20 thing. So, and I qualified for the National Championship, finished 4th. It happened, I mean, it was a magical period, like 5 months or 6 months, when I went from being just a random club player to number 4 in the country, National Junior Champion, National Sub-Junior. It was just fantastic.
It all happened really quick in the space of about 4 or 5 years. I mean, you were winning about 2 or 3 championships a year. So is that also a sort of blur as it happens?
This period is pretty sensational, and it went by pretty fast. And I must say, okay, in the end, I took it with the sang-froid. Oh, you know, it must happen.
But sang-froid at that age must have been pretty difficult. I mean, you were all 14, 15 and in school. I mean, did the schoolboys tease you, applaud you, adulate you, or ignore you and dislike you?
No, they were very sweet, all of them. And in fact, they were very nice. I mean, none of them got this idea that I somehow had to be treated specially or something like that. But they would all follow the papers every day, and all of them would always be interested in what I did. But I was already famous in the school, because in the Philippines they have this kind of a school bag, which is very popular. Almost all the kids there had it. And but it's a kind of a box, a huge box, and they'd put all their books in and bring it. And in my school here, I think I was the only kid who had a box like that. So many years later, I remember when I was in 9th or 10th standard, kids coming up to me and saying, "Oh yeah, you were the kid with that box." So I was famous before I was a chess player, before I was known to be a chess player in the school. So
now, in 1996, you got married to your wife Aruna. It was an arranged marriage. Where did the two of you meet?
Well, it went pretty much the way you'd expect. Her parents, there was a broker kind of thing, and her parents and my parents, and then the horoscopes and all that.
So very much matchmaker, find me a match.
Yeah, very much.
But, can I ask, why an arranged marriage? Did you not trust yourself to fall in love with the right person?
Basically, for me, I was kind of lazy, so it kind of worked out.
Too lazy to fall in love?
Too lazy to, you know, really stir out of bed and go anywhere and get into all the effort. And so, you know, I cannot say, you know, I actively pushed it or something. In these points, it's always the parents saying, yeah, it's time for you to get married. You never, I don't know many kids will go to their parents and say, I think it's time, you know, can you fix someone for me? It just doesn't work that way. It's always the parents anticipating this sort of thing.
Now, chess, of course, is a solitary game. But are chess players solitary people?
Chess players can be pretty absorbed in what they do. And if that's nutty, then we're nutty. But, you know, I've seen the whole range. I mean, I've seen some chess players who are clearly nutty. But there are lots of others who are fine as well.
Where do you come in that category?
I would hope in the normal category.
The world has seen the strong, silent, dominant Anand behind the chessboard. What's he like when he's not playing chess?
I like to think that I'm pretty laid back, and I always like to, you know, crack jokes at other people and just have a good time. No, I'm not that serious at all.
Your friends say that, in fact, you have a wicked sense of humor, that you're always playing pranks with people.
Yeah, I like doing this, and I know quite a few chess playing friends also who tend to do this a lot. So, yeah, we sit and have a good time.
And I gather you also are a great mimic. You do an excellent Russian accent.
Yeah. Well, because there's so many Russians in chess, eventually I picked up this accent. I don't know if I'm a great mimic for other things, but the Russian accent I can do pretty well. Especially I love the way they switch their, they can't say H, so they always substitute G for it. So, you know, you have alcohol and harmony and all these things. And I love teasing them about it, but just good-natured stuff.
So is your secret weapon against Kasparov and perhaps even Karpov when they're perhaps playing a little better than they should be, you imitate them back and frighten them?
I can imitate them a little bit. They're not that stereotypical, actually. I mean, actually, I think they've understood this and they've done a bit of work on their hitches along with their English. So it's not that easy to tease them. Anatoly, I can tease. I mean, the guy really takes these jokes very well.
He's got a good sense of humor.
He's got a very good sense of humor, and I can really pull his leg. And sometimes, okay, Aruna tells me afterwards, I think you're really pushing it. But
what about Kasparov? He's a bit defensive.
Well, you can do one, and then you have to watch his reaction because he can just explode. He's very energetic about him. He's very volatile, and basically he can't he can't separate this mood from the game to post-game period or the evening or something like that. He stays in the same mode most of the time. So.
Whereas you can quite easily switch off after the game's over and get into a different mood in the evening.
Yes, very much.
In fact, they say of you that your greatest talent is not just that you're a brilliant chess player, but that you're a gentleman at the same time. Is that something you consciously strive at?
I find it much easier to be like that. I mean, I know for a fact that I cannot be that focused after the game.
But is it difficult?
In fact, I think I'm not even that focused during the game. For me, it's something, I tend to do something much better if I'm having fun, and if I think I'm having fun, than if I were ever to, I don't think I will do something better, be it chess, be it whatever, if I'm serious about it and think, okay, now it's time to do a good job or something.
So
it just doesn't work like that.
You're not containing yourself, you're just naturally polite.
Exactly, and I think in general, I find it much easier just to be easygoing and think, because that's just the way I am. And I found that this has no effect on my chess, that I play equally well when I'm sitting there, all trying to, all worked up, trying to do a good job, and just having a good time.
Just doesn't change your manner or the way you speak or anything?
No, not at all. I mean, I've just found it easier that way. So far, it hasn't hurt me, so.
And you're right at the top of the world of chess, and you're only 31. What now?
I would like to play at least another 10 years of top chess. And you'll always find new goals. You can break new ratings barriers. You can win tournaments again and again. You can retain your world title. I mean, there's just no end of new challenges to be, no new peaks to be conquered.
So as they say, the king is born, but this king is determined to reign for a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, good luck, and I look forward to the reign. Thank you very much for a wonderful interview.
Thank you very much.